Hi again, I'm back. I got interrupted by one of my students. Had to ask a question on the Google Meet that was still open. All right, guys, we left off. We were talking about Aspasia. Aspasia was a woman who lived from 470 to 400 BCE. She originally came from the Greek-speaking city of Miletus in Asia Minor. Her beauty and intellect made her a democratic symbol to many Greeks who treated her like a modern rock star. She aggressively entered into a male-dominated society and government of Greece. She was one of the first women to encourage other females to participate in government and demand their rights. Yay. Okay. So what was the role of slavery in Athens? Slavery was common in ancient civilizations. It was often considered to be a normal part of life, even by enslaved people themselves. Even in a democracy like Athens, slavery was common. Most Athenian households had at least one enslaved person. Wealthy families often had several. Many enslaved people were prisoners who had been captured in battle. These included both Greeks and non-Greeks. Enslaved men worked on farms, in the shops of artisans, or they worked at hard labor. Enslaved women were cooks and servants in wealthy homes and sometimes taught upper-class children. The treatment of enslaved people varied. Those who labored in mines often died very young. Slaves who worked as craftspeople had easier lives. Sometimes enslaved people could earn money and, in rare cases, buy their freedom. Slavery might have helped Athenians develop the prosperous economy. So let's talk about the Athenian economy. Farming was a common occupation among Athenians. Local farmers grew grains, vegetables, fruits, including grapes and olives, to make wine and olive oil for shipments to foreign markets. Athenian farms lacked sufficient land to grow enough food to support the city-state. Although Athenians grew some grain, they had to import more from other places. Athens built a large fleet of ships to trade with colonies and other city-states in the Mediterranean world. During the 400s BCE, Athens led the Greek world in trade. Important goods made and traded in Athens, including pottery and leather products. The war between Athens and Sparta. As time passed, the Greek city-states learned that their survival depended on cooperation. Even after the Persian Wars ended, the Persian threat against Greece remained. In 478 BCE, Athens joined with other city-states to form a defensive league or protective group to defend its members against the Persians. Because the league at first had its headquarters on the island of Delos, it became known as the Delian League. Athens provided the Delian League with most of its sailors and soldiers, while the other city-states supplied money and ships. During the next several decades, the league drove Persia out of the remaining Greek territories of Anatolia, free of Persian domination. Greece grew richer through increased overseas trade. The Athenian Empire. In spite of its success, the Delian League failed. Athens was the strongest city-state, and the league's officials and commanders, and most of the troops were Athenian. Over time, Athens began to use its influence to control the other members' city-states. The League was no longer an alliance of equal city-states fighting Persia. It had become a group of city-states controlled by Athens. Pericles' leadership helped Athens dominate the Delian League. He treated the other city-states like his subjects, demanding loyalty and payments from them. He even insisted that they use Athenian coins and measures. In 454 BCE, the Athenians moved the Delian League's treasury from Delos to Athens. They also sent troops to other Greek city-states to help the common people rebel against nobles in power. War breaks out. As the economic and political power of Athens grew, other city-states, especially Sparta, became alarmed. Politically and socially, Sparta and Athens were quite different, and neither trusted the other. both wanted to be the major power in the Greek world. What else is new, right? They both want to be in charge. Well, Sparta became the leader of an alliance of city-states opposed to Athens. In 433 BCE, Athens began interfering with some of Sparta's allies. These allies pressured Sparta to attack Athens. War broke out 431 BCE and continued until 404 BCE. And the possibility of future cooperation among the Greek city-states disappeared as a result of this war. Historians call this conflict the Peloponnesian War because Sparta was located in Peloponnesus. Pericles' funeral oration. That sounds like he died, but it isn't, something else. During the war's first winter, Athens held a public funeral to honor soldiers who had died in battle. Afterward, the Athenian families gathered to mourn their losses. In a very famous speech called the Funeral Oration, Pericles talked about the greatness of Athens and reminded the people that they made their government strong. He reminded them that citizens had to obey the rules in their constitution, their framework of government. They accepted certain duties, such as paying taxes and defending the city, and they were also awarded certain rights, such as the ability to vote and run for office. In this speech, Pericles emphasized that the democratic way of life is worth protecting. He urged his listeners to have the courage to continue fighting. The ideas Pericles expressed are still valued by citizens of democratic countries today. So why did Athens lose the war? Spoiler. Why did Athens lose the war? Well, in a battle soon after the war started, Sparta and its allies surrounded Athens. They knew that in an open battle, they could easily defeat the Athenian army. Pericles understood this weakness of his troops, so he chose to keep his army and the people within the walls of the surrounded city. The powerful Athenian navy would bring supplies to the city from its colonies and allies. Sparta lacked a navy, so they could not stop these ships. For almost 2 years, Athens remained safe. Then a deadly disease broke out within this overcrowded city's population, and more than a third of the people died, including Pericles. During the next 25 years, each side won some victories, but was unable to defeat its opponent. Finally, Sparta made a deal with the Persian Empire. The Spartans agreed to give the Persians some Greek territory in Anatolia. In return, Sparta received enough Persian gold to build its own navy. So now they're going to have a navy. And as the war dragged on, Athens fell into a state of unrest. The democracy had been overthrown, but then that government was replaced after it was overthrown, and by the end of 411 BCE, democracy got restored in Athens. But the war continued, and in 405 BCE, Sparta's newly built navy destroyed the Athenian navy fleet. Sparta then placed a blockade around Athens, preventing food and other supplies from entering the city. Starving, the Athenians finally surrendered a year later. And the Spartans and their allies knocked down the city walls. The Athenian Empire collapsed. So the effects of the war. The Peloponnesian War brought disaster to the Greek city-states. The governments were left divided and weak. Many people had died in battle or from disease. Fighting had destroyed farms. It left many people with no way to earn a living. As a result, thousands of young Greeks left Greece for Persia. They joined the Persian army. After the conflict, Sparta ruled its newly acquired empire, much as Athens had ruled its empire before. This harsh treatment angered Sparta's former allies. An uneasy political situation developed, and during 30 years that came after, Sparta tried to put down rebellions. They fought against Persia again, and finally in 371 BCE, the city-state of Thebes seized Sparta and ended the Spartan Empire. And 10 years later, Thebes also collapsed. As the city-states fought, they failed to notice the growing threat from this other kingdom called the Kingdom of Macedonia, which was to the north. Macedonia's strength and desire for expansion would eventually cost the Greek city-states their independence. And that is the end of lesson 4. Thanks for listening. See you next time.